for all of us. It's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.
Today on the show, I've got Tim Hermeling. He's the EVP of Revenue Operations at Cortland. Cortland's a vertically integrated multifamily real estate investment development and management company that manages and is invested in over 250 apartment communities comprised of over 80,000 homes in the U.S. And Tim's diverse career has taken him from places like Hyatt to Northern Trust Company to Cortland. On the show today, we talk about his new role as the head of revenue operations, how it's different than marketing, what does it include, why is it important, and frankly, what does it help align within the organization? We talk about Cortland and how the company is different and uniquely positioned in the marketplace. And we talk about marketing and how Cortland goes to market with a very differentiated proposition and brand approach to how that then carries forward to their performance-driven marketing and much more. You don't want to miss this conversation with Tim Hermeling. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Alan. I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. I think before we get into talking about your business and your pathway, career, et cetera, I hear you have been a triathlon and a marathon athlete. And one, I want to ask, do I have that right? And then two, I hate running and I am looking for any tips you can give me.
I can share some based on my experience. So yes, you are correct. I have done triathlons as well as 2 marathons. Now, if you include the fact that you have to run a marathon within the Ironman triathlon I did, then that would make 3. Triathlons are interesting because they're rather addicting. I started my first one that was a mini sprint, which means I swam in a swimming pool and then biked for 10 miles and ran a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. And you get this addiction to it and you continue to want to go further and further distance. The ultimate is an Ironman. So I've done a half Ironman and a full Ironman in addition to the 2 marathons, which were in Chicago, where I'm from. And the ironic thing is, I actually think that long endurance running is not healthy for you, but it's an achievement. I'm a goal-oriented person. And so establishing goals and allowing me to achieve those, I think, is important. And triathlons and marathons allow you to do that. Now, for those of you like yourself, Alan, who want to explore getting into running, I think the opportunity is reduce it to the smallest distance you can and just say, you know what, I'm going to start with running for 1 minute and see how far you go. And then you walk and then you run. And if you continue to alternate that over time, running a minute, walking a minute, suddenly you'll find yourself at a mile. And then before you know it, after a little while, you'll be running marathons.
I love it. I'll give it a try. I don't know what it is about running. And I'm jealous of those that love it and enjoy it and do it, because when you travel, you just put a pair of sneakers and running shoes in your bag and you're good to go.
This is true. This is true. The funny thing is, I read an article once about what runners think. And the number one thing that came out of that study was that runners think about how much they hate running when they're running. And it's true when you start out, but what I found is it's a great way to process your thoughts. So I don't use any music, or I run with no headset, earphones, ear listening devices. I allow my thoughts to just wander, which is helpful in business and helpful in, the personal day-to-day things that we all are dealing with. And so that's one of the primary reasons that I do it as well. It allows me to organize my thoughts and myself. It's a great stress reliever too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. I will take you up on your tips and try to see if I can let's talk about your career path. You are now the EVP of Revenue Operations at Cortland, but where did you get your start in business and kind of what were some of the stops along the way?
So the place that I wanted to go when I went to college was to be a sports broadcaster. And I actually did some news reporting as an intern, and then they hired me as part of their needs at this ABC TV affiliate in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I did that for a while and was from Chicago and felt like I wanted to go back to the big city. And so I actually pursued public relations then. And I didn't want to work in a small town, which I would be required to do as a sports or news reporter on television. And so I went into PR, and I think it was fascinating dealing with reporters, trying to provide them information, but also protect the interests of the company. And what I found, though, is that while I always had a seat in the CEO's office if there was a critical issue, I was always interested in strategy and how business established its goals and then ultimately put together strategic plans. And so I decided to pursue marketing. And so I went into marketing when I was at Budget Rent-A-Car Corporation. And at the time, I went into something called relationship marketing, and it was a rather new concept at the time. And it was really focused on direct marketing, and dating myself, really focused on direct mail, which I have heard is making a slight comeback. But that was the primary way you developed a one-to-one relationship with someone as a consumer. And so that was what set me on my course in marketing, and that's where I have been ever since. I've worked in financial services and the travel industry, as I mentioned, with Budget, and then decided to pursue this opportunity at Cortland. And Cortland is a large, as we call ourselves, multifamily or apartment owner and operator, primarily throughout the Southeast and Southwest. We have 80,000 units. And the company was trying to do some things that really I get excited about. And it allowed me to focus on building a marketing competency for Cortland and really establishing a marketing strategy. And so I've been with the company for about 9 years now, and recently moved over into what is called revenue operations, which I understand is one of the fastest growing functions within business. And revenue operations is really aligning all of the teams that support the top line growth of a company. So everything from marketing lead generation to sales and even into credit and collections, because that has an impact on the revenue generation of a company. And we also have an analytics team or performance metrics team within our group. And I think that's important because all of those had been in disparate places within our company. And that's traditionally the approach with most businesses. But this aligns everyone across common goals. And it enables us, therefore, to clear roadblocks and focus on truly offering products and services that will ultimately drive revenue for the company. And that's been my journey thus far. It's been exciting and looking forward to seeing how we can continue to grow this new function within Cortland.
Love it. Love it. Congrats on the new role. And you talked about how it's a little different than marketing, but it sounds like it's an expansion of your prior role to add these like revenue operations components to the job. Is that the best way to think about it?
It is, absolutely. In the past, when I was EVP of marketing here at Cortland, I had branding, which we may want to talk a little bit about at some point, because branding within the multifamily industry is rather unique, and we're very focused on doing that. So we had branding, social media or online reputation management, and then lead generation. And I still have some of those functions, but have, to your point, added revenue, which is a logical addition of having revenue management, because it allows our lead generation team to work much more closely with our revenue team so that they can be on the same page in terms of the number of leads that are necessary to drive into one of our communities, for example, so that we can attempt to convert those to leases. And it just makes that process much easier so that we're all working together as opposed to having separate goals that we might be pursuing.
Yeah, it definitely brings everyone in alignment. And a former manager of mine would say it's one throat to choke.
That's interesting you say that because we've used that term here in talking about the function that you're.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about Cortland. You mentioned 80,000 units, largely in I think I got this right, Southeast and Southwest, the Sun Belt, and multifamily real estate. But tell me a little bit more. How should I think about Cortland?
Cortland operates in the Sun Belt, as you said. So we're based in Atlanta. So we have a large footprint of apartment communities, as we call them, in Atlanta, but also Florida, North Carolina, then down into Texas, throughout Texas, in fact, Dallas, Houston, Austin. We're in Denver and Colorado Springs, and also Arizona. And then we do have some communities in Arlington, Virginia, and in Columbus, Ohio. But the primary focus is in the Sun Belt, as you said. And obviously, apartments have been around for a long time, but our founder, who is our CEO, always believed in a different concept for what apartment living should be. And whereas it's traditionally been thought of as four walls and a roof, he wanted it to be something more. He wanted it to be an experience. He wanted to provide people with a better living experience than they traditionally would be used to. And so we will often go in and purchase an existing apartment community, and we will renovate it to introduce things that many homeowners take for granted, but had not been in apartments. So that might be the furnishings that you would have with the nicer kitchens, with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. And so for people who were used to living in an apartment, it became a much more aspirational thing that they may not have otherwise been able to have. The other thing that we wanted to focus on, and the company started in 2005, was to give people amenities such as fitness centers, nice clubhouses where they could work on their own if they chose to, very nice swimming pool. And so it became a place that they could invite friends, or they could hang out and do things that they wanted. We, in fact, with fitness centers, would have training, or we would have various training classes that people could attend, all kinds of things from Zumba to spin and yoga were in our communities. And it allowed us to give people an experience that allowed them to hopefully live a better and more enjoyable life while they lived at Cortland.
That's amazing. I have seen the name, and because I used to live in North Carolina for a long time and then travel to a lot of the places you mentioned. Those are all growth markets as well. It's very, very advantageous, the markets that you're in as well, I would think.
It is.
So.
It is. And that certainly is a deliberate focus by our investments team when they're looking at opportunities. They first want to find those markets where there's inward migration, to your point. And then secondly, where there's an opportunity for us to have what we call density, which means it's not just one community, but we may have 30 communities in a metropolitan area. And that, we believe, gives people choice. And from a marketing standpoint, it allows us to build our brand, and so that people really understand what Cortland is. So when it comes time to making a decision, or when they feel like it's time for them to move to a new home, they're going to put Cortland in the consideration set.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I know you mentioned branding before, so let's talk about that. Normally, I don't think of the name of the apartment, if you will. I think of the location, et cetera. So I know you're on a different path, and I'd love to know a little bit more about like your approach to branding and building your reputation, if you will.
Yeah. So we are very different than most of our competitors in the space. And as you alluded to, apartments are traditionally white labeled. So each one carries its own name. And we're different in that all of our communities are named Cortland with a hyper-local geographic name attached to it. So, for example, I'm in Atlanta, and there is a mall across the street called Phipps Plaza. There's an apartment community that we happen to own right next to it. And so we've called that Cortland at Phipps. And we do that so that people understand locationally where that particular community is. So when they begin their apartment search, we hope two things will happen. First is that Cortland will be top of mind with them. And we spend a lot of our resources and efforts with branding campaigns so that people will know of Cortland and put us into the consideration set or go directly to our website and start to engage with us. And then two, with having that geographic name, they know exactly where that community is. And, I guess the old adage is location when it comes to real estate. And that's the approach we're using here so that people have an understanding of the location that best fits their needs. And so that's what we do. And we believe that we get benefit from the Cortland name being repeated from the monument signs that we have out front that show what that community name is, to the various branding campaigns that we do in most of our markets. And that is what allows us to hopefully grow brand awareness. And if you asked someone to do a brand tracker or brand awareness study, the number one answer has traditionally been never heard of any of them. And we're trying to change that so that we can grow awareness in our markets and people become very familiar with who Cortland is. And we're starting to see results that help to support that we're achieving that objective.
I love it. You've got a lot of great things going on, and the brand strategy makes perfect sense when you consider the experience from design, right? Like the elevated experience and community and amenities that you talked about before, the density, location strategy, having a brand name affiliated with all of those different properties to signal what this experience would be like just makes perfect sense. And I have to believe it makes your marketing a little bit more efficient, maybe too, versus having to market each individual property as its own.
And you know what? That's an excellent point. And that was one of the reasons we chose to pursue this strategy. So when I joined the company, we were going through this brand strategy planning, and that was one of the things that we identified, is that rather than having to market each individual community, every community would benefit whenever we had the name Cortland on in out of home, or if we were doing targeted brand campaigns in the digital space. And I guess a rising tide lifts all ships, and that certainly applies in this case as well. And I think to your point about how we have created density, how we have focused on providing that better quality living experience, that is something that we can then start to focus on in our messaging through our brand campaigns, so that people don't just understand or don't just see what Cortland is, which is important when you've got lower awareness, but what we stand for as well, and why we're differentiated from our competitive set. And so that's been very important. We also, I think it's fun, we last year launched a mascot, if you will. It's a pug named Cortie, Cortie, which is obviously a play on Cortland. And so Cortie is our spokespug, because Cortie is a pug. We've had fun trying to bring Cortie to life. I think Cortie works well for us because we are pet friendly, and there are a lot of residents who have pets, and so that shows them that Cortland is a place where they and their pets can live. And we've done research in the past that shows how important pets are in the decision-making process. And in fact, even some people will bring their pet on a tour to make sure the pet feels comfortable in the community. It's allowed us to drive home additional messaging about what our product offering is, but it also does it in a memorable way. And I think that's important because people have a lot of choices in an apartment home, and it's a highly fragmented industry. And this allows us to hopefully create some additional memory or muscle memory with them when it comes time for them to make a decision.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that notion. And in terms of theory around brand and research that I watch, making yourself more memorable or increasing the mental availability of people thinking about Cortland, things like mascots and sounds or sonic branding, like all of these other components, just outside of the logo and the look and the feel and the message, if you will, all play a role in like deepening those memories of your brand. So
They do. Cortie's an Australian talking pug also. So
I love it. Australian pug.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing.
And we actually have a gentleman who lives in Australia who is the voice of Cortie. I'm sorry that if I shock people that Cortie actually does not speak. In reality.
In reality, yes. Tell me a little bit more about what marketing looks like in your industry. We've talked about the brand and what you're doing from a branding standpoint, but what else does marketing look like?
So marketing in the multifamily industry has traditionally been seen as an expense, not as much as an investment. I think that's very different here at Cortland. We've got strong support from our CEO and other leaders to use marketing as a real top line driver. And because of that, we've been able to innovate more within this industry or more quickly than others have. And the way that people have traditionally marketed or done their lead generation in the past was to use lead aggregators. We call them internet listing services, and listeners would know them as Zillow or apartments.com, for example. And in the past, when I first started with Cortland, that's where everybody was in all of them. And you would subscribe to all of the listing services, and you experienced diminishing returns because people didn't always they didn't shop in all of them. We then decided to branch out on our own. And there were two key principles I had when I joined the company that I wanted to establish. One was to control our own brand. So we've talked about that. The other was to control our own lead generation destiny. And I'll just use apartments.com as an example. Depending on how broad your search was as a prospective renter, you might have dozens of different communities to choose from. So getting the attention of that prospect could be very challenging, and you may not even make it they may not even look at your listing on apartments.com. And so we wanted to control our own destiny. And so we started doing paid search, which at the time in our industry was not used very much 9 years ago. Now, I know other industries take that for granted, but we decided to start carving out marketing budgets for each of our communities to do paid search. And we've done that over time. And now a lot of the companies in our space are all doing paid search. And that, of course, has bid up search terms. And that's one of the reasons then that we started even focusing and leaning in more on the branding, because we wanted to start trying to drive organic traffic to our websites. So we have continued to try to innovate and stay one step ahead of our competition. I'm highly focused on being very disciplined as a marketer and really understanding our performance metrics, cost of lead, basic metrics that a lot of others look at, but we're highly focused on that. And I think we can, arguably say we've got better conversion rates than some others in the industry would have as a result of really understanding where our residents are coming from, a traffic source, and making sure that we have very strong differentiated messaging to make it a compelling opportunity. And then once they come to our website, and that's the primary channel by which they will initially be introduced to us, we want to make sure that we're curating content that is that's engaging to them by letting them see the apartment community as a whole, but giving them strong photography and the ability to self-navigate the various apartment units that they may want to look at living in. And so it's really trying to capture them and create more personalization over time with them. So I guess I'm trading off of my direct marketing and direct mail roots, but doing it in a much more digital fashion these days.
Yeah. No, I really love the example and how you started competing at the lead aggregators, moving your way up to paid search to jujitsu your way into direct traffic, and then how the brand and elevates that strategy even more. And I have to believe, you probably believe this too, but from what I see out in the world, the brand strategy approach that we've talked about, I think probably trumps all of your competition. That's just my assessment.
I would like to agree with you, Si. And I will agree with you on that. I think that we are very active. There are some other companies that do have, that use a similar, I'll call it master brand strategy, where some of them are named the same, but they're not activating that brand, if you will, in campaigns like we are. For example, we're a sponsor of the Atlanta Braves here. We have in stadium and on broadcast advertising that we do with the Atlanta Braves, and we've partnered with them for probably 5 years now. And so that's been a great way. I've been on airplanes and I'll be watching the Braves game on ESPN on the airplane, and I will see around the terrace LED banner that all stadiums have. I'll see our advertisement on there, which is pretty cool. It's something that we've, as I mentioned earlier, are very focused on activating that brand so that people really understand the differentiation that we can provide to them when they're making that apartment home search. And the other thing that we've started to get into, we've been very focused on, is our online reputation and using that as a way to let people understand why Cortland is the best choice for them.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
How does online reputation? I can only imagine it's vital, especially given your location based, and it's easy to do reviews in various formats, etc. So tell me a little bit more about that and the work you've been doing.
So a few years ago, we started recognizing how reviews, Google scores were so important to people when it came time to determining the hotel they might stay in or the restaurant that they're going to make reservations for that special dinner on a Friday or Saturday night. And we saw that probably applies to the apartment industry as well. And let's really focus on our online score, or specifically our Google scores, our Google ratings. And because we felt very confident in the product and service that we've been delivering to our residents, all we had to do was just ask them to leave a review. And we were confident enough that they would leave very positive reviews. And so we started doing that. And one of the things that we found is that it was a recent reputation.com study. Actually, it was from 2022, but that 55% of prospects will not tour a community that is rated under 4 stars. And you get 3 times as many Google listing views when you have a higher reputation score. And people, I think it's 88%, won't even tour an apartment community unless they have read a review first. And so that just underscored the importance of it and confirmed our hypothesis on it. And so as I mentioned, we started asking people for scores, and or not for scores, but for leaving a review for us. And so we started finding they were leaving 4 and 5-star reviews. And so over the past 3 years, we have had the leading online reputation score, according to reputation.com, of all of our industry competitors. So in 2020, 2021, and then this past year, 2023, we regained that top spot after being number 2 in 2022. So we're very proud of that. I think it's important because it's not us telling the prospect how great we are, it's their peers. And peer-to-peer communication carries much more weight than us telling you how great we are. And so I think that has helped us. It also, when you now bring it back to the branding side, gives us something to talk about that don't believe us, believe your fellow renters and residents about the quality that you get from Cortland. So it meshes very well within the marketing strategy and ecosystem we're trying to create.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. It's amazing. And kudos on getting back to number 1. That's, I'm sure, no small feat, and maintaining that over so many years.
Yeah, it does take effort, but it's all it takes is really just asking the residents to leave a review. And we find that they naturally talk about what a positive experience it has been for them living in one of our communities. Yeah, it's been great. The other interesting thing that we have found is there's a higher willingness to pay. So, for example, we've done conjoint. We do a lot of what I will call performance measurement and research within marketing, and which is a bit different than most companies I've worked for. The fact that we have a dedicated team within the marketing and revenue operations team to analyze our performance and get resident feedback. But one of the things we did was conjoint analysis on the correlation between Google scores and people's willingness to pay as those Google scores increase. And what we found is that if you go from a 3.9 Google rating at a community to a 4.0, there's a willingness to pay $39 additional per month for that. And it continues all the way up, into the 4, 5, and obviously 5 is the highest you can get. But that's the other thing, and the other benefit for really focusing on the quality of the service and being able to then demonstrate that quality to people. They're more drawn to you.
Yeah, that's huge. And I love that you've done conjoint analysis. I think it's one of the most under-leveraged market research techniques out there. So that's amazing. It's amazing. I love the direct linkage to star ratings.
Yeah. It was pretty interesting and enlightening to us as well. And we like to use a lot of conjoint. We even did conjoint analysis on dogs when we were coming up with our campaign. So
I love that. It's all about testing and optimizing in your research. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating to learn about your business and the industry that you're in and the type of marketing and your approach and strategies, et cetera. One thing we like to do on the show is to get to know you a little bit better. And we know you have an appetite for running and triathlons. But my favorite question to ask everyone that comes on the show is, has there been an experience of your past that defines or makes up who you are today?
So it's interesting that you asked that, because as I think about that question, we talked earlier about what was my career progression. And I mentioned how I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. Obviously, I didn't go that route in the long run. But being a reporter, I think, was very foundational and informative for me, because it allowed me to be more inquisitive, asking questions, trying to track down information. As part of that, you have to be resourceful and trying to find sources, trying to get that information where you can ask those inquisitive questions, and then dealing with facts and data. And it also requires you to operate with integrity. So I think, though I only did that for about a year, and I was working full time doing that while also going to college, or finishing college, I think that really helped lay a strong foundation for me. And I'm a left-handed person when it comes to writing and things like that. So you would say, oh, he's creative. I do believe I'm creative, but I do have a very rigorous analytical approach to marketing, which I think is for many marketers, that may be an obvious thing, but I think they realize how important analytics and rigor is in successful marketing today. So I think that helped me become more successful and help form my approach to the marketing profession and revenue operations now.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, we'll bring marketer. What advice would you give your younger self if you're starting this journey all over again?
I would say make yourself uncomfortable or be comfortable being uncomfortable, which I think I think the military uses that concept as well. But certainly doing triathlons and marathons is a very uncomfortable experience. I remember when I was doing my Ironman, I was 60 miles into my 116-mile bike ride and I got stung by a bee. So that was certainly uncomfortable, in addition to the fact that I was now 60 miles into something after a 2.6-mile swim. But I think from a professional standpoint, you want to make yourself uncomfortable because you're growing and you're putting yourself into places that you've never been. And that is going to help expand your skill set and obviously your experiences, which will help inform you as you continue to grow in your career. Making yourself uncomfortable. The other one I might say is life is a mindset, and what we think is what we do. I think those are very powerful concepts. The mind is a very powerful thing, and it can be used in a good way, a positive way, or it can take someone a different direction. And I think I was a psychology minor. My mom was a psychologist, and one of my daughters was a psychology major. So the psychology of things, I think, is critically important and not always taken and used as much as it could. And frankly, marketing is psychological based too, right? Getting into the minds of consumer and is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny you bring that up. Like I thought I wanted to be a clinical psychologist when I grew up, and went and studied psychology and then found marketing at a student newspaper of all places. Yeah, I totally agree with you. The psychology is a powerful component, both in terms of individual performance, but also to your point, like in marketing, it's critical.
Yeah, it's interesting how both you and I wanted to go down certain paths and we ended up going different directions, isn't it?
Yeah. There's after interviewing so many marketers, I think there's a lot of us out there like that. We're not alone in that. But I'm curious if there's a topic that you think marketers need to be learning more about, or maybe just something you're trying to learn more about yourself these days.
The big elephant in the room would be AI, right?
Yeah.
I actually went to an AI conference in Las Vegas last year, and it's fascinating. And I think that it has the opportunity to help shape marketing in positive ways. One of the things that I like about the concept of AI is that it can remove subjectivity and the human bias out of making decisions. Now, obviously, AI is informed by human thoughts and historic behaviors and things. But going back to my more rigorous analytical approach to things, I feel like subjectivity can lead us to decisions that may not be the most ideal, and using facts and information and removing the psychological effect of human behavior can be very helpful. And that's where AI has the opportunity to be used. Now, it also has other potential downsides to it, and it has to be used and monitored in the right way. But I think as disciplined marketers, it presents a whole world of opportunity, and it's changing very quickly. But I don't think most of us as marketers truly understand what its capabilities are, or what generative AI is versus other types of AI and how that can be used. So it's something that there needs to be more focus and understanding on by all of us, including myself.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's going to be hugely powerful. It's just a matter of like how we tap into it the best way possible.
Yep, that's right.
Are there any trends or subcultures that you're following you think other people should take notice of?
I think something that I've been interested in, and I think I've experienced it myself, is life is about experiences. And I'm seeing that more and more people are focused on experiences. We look at it from the apartment industry or at Cortland as, how can we curate a better experience within the community, or how can we allow people to live the life that they want to live and go do experience things that they want on their terms, because they know their apartment home, their home that they're living in, is taken care of and it's worry free. And so I think experiences are something that as marketers we should be thinking about. How can we partner with other organizations to help create experiences in whatever offering that we have from a product or service standpoint, but also as a way to market ourselves as well.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's something we've been talking about to some degree for a little while, but there's so much more that we can push into as it relates to experiences and how to bring it, to your point, bring it to life in all the various ways that we can.
Yeah, that's right.
Last question for you. What do you think is the largest opportunity or threat facing marketers today?
So I think we've actually already talked about it. It's back to AI, because we talked a little bit about the opportunity for it, but the threat of it is that it can, from a design standpoint, it can create advertisements if we allowed it to. It could become the copywriters of our department. Now, some people might say, oh, that's great because I'm saving on staffing costs. But while eliminating some of the human bias in things can be a positive, eliminating the innovative capabilities of the human mind and of individuals and people coming together to collaborate could be a downside. And depending on where it goes, it could make things less impactful as well. So I think AI is both the opportunity, but it's also a threat if we don't understand how to use it and make sure that we have people who know how to work with it most effectively to drive the goals and outcomes that we want.
Couldn't agree more. Tim, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experience, your wisdom, and so much more. So thank you. Thank you for the time.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me on, and I enjoy the conversation and going down memory lane a bit in my own professional and personal life.
I love it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me with post-production support from Sam Robertson. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe on marketingtodaypodcast.com. Tell your friends and colleagues about the show. I love hearing from listeners. You can contact me at marketingtodaypodcast.com. There you'll also find complete show notes and links to what was discussed in the episode today, and you can search our archives. I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing.